Human sacrifice, dogs and cats living together, mass hysteria. The sky is falling, 0.6.0 is here, the end is nigh. Or so it would seem. There's been a lot of consternation floating around regarding this update. People have been afraid, they're worried that it's going to destroy the game as we know it. And they're right? Even some of the greatest prognosticators out there, some of the most illustrious YouTubers have said so, right? Because we have all the answers. We know everything. We're all super unicum. You need to bow to us. And that is the furthest from the truth. We know no more than you know. We're no better at the game as a whole. So to take our word verbatim is silly, if not foolish. I don't pretend to know all the answers because I don't. But I do know a few things. I do know some things. And I know a lot of myths have been going around. An absolute large amount of them. One that 6.0 and these new captain skills are going to be game breaking. That somehow they're going to destroy the fun in the game. So you know what I did? I took a look at some of the biggest myths going around. Some of the biggest perpetrators of doom and gloom. And I'm going to try and set the record straight here, according to Zoup. Because again, like I said, I'm just a guy. I just play the game. I don't know any more than you all do. I've got my opinions and you've got yours, but I'm going to try and get the conversation flowing. I'm going to try and get the wheels greased here. Try and prove to you that this is not the end of World of Warships. Not in any way, shape, or form. And actually, the more and more I think about it, the more I actually like these changes to the captain skill tree. Let's start going through these myths. Let's take them on, one by one. Let's hit the nail in the proverbial head. So the biggest myth out there, myth number one, the game is ruined. That is not the case, not at all. Many of you all are still playing, all of you are. If you're watching this, you're probably interested in what's going on if you haven't played yet. I'm going to tell you right now, the game is not ruined, far from it. And honestly, I think several months from now, we're going to look at these updates and say, hey, maybe they did know what they were doing. I'm sure there are going to be tweaks in the next couple of months, and I'm sure there might be changes. That's the way any major update goes. I mean, just look at the old captain skill tree. Look how many revisions that went through, how many additions there were to it. Things get added, things get taken away. But I do like this new symmetrical captain tree. And there's a couple reasons why. One, mainly, it creates some very, very hard choices. It causes you to think. It causes you to think about the individual ship you are using. In the other skill tree, I just went verbatim on every single battleship I had. I picked my usual picks. Of course, there's a slight variance if I was using a US battleship or a German battleship. You know, instead of taking your manual secondaries on a US battleship, you took manual anti-aircraft. That was really the only big difference there. Not so in this new skill tree. I find myself making harder decisions and giving up things that I didn't plan to. But I digress. That's getting away from the main myth that this game is now somehow ruined. That's just not the case. The game will endure. Players will endure. We will survive. We will find ways to make it work. So far from it. The sole argument that the game would be broken was radio direction finding, or radio position finding. Whatever they call it now, I think it's not even that anymore. But that was the main reason people thought the game was going to be broken, and far from it. I'm going to get into that right now. And that centers along people worrying that this patch, this update would nerf destroyers. Myth number two, destroyers have been nerfed. Oh my gosh. No, they haven't. Far from it. Far, far from it. I think players are finding out right now, if anything, this patch has buffed destroyers. I mean, look on the bright side. You can now take concealment at 10 points. You couldn't do that before. You needed a 15-point captain to do that. So this has essentially been a de facto buff for almost every single destroyer in the game. If you got a 10-point captain, you've got concealment. And if you don't want to take concealment, guess what you can take? Radio position finding. That is what it's called, right? Or is it just now radio finding or radio positioning? I'd have to take a look. The patch has only been out so long, and honestly, I really don't use that one that much. For me, as a battleship driver, I don't find a need for it. There's too many other important things that I would have to give up to take it. So this whole notion that this is somehow a massive destroyer nerf is ridiculous. Because if you go to the forums right now, destroyers are the ones using it the most. So, myth number 3, radio position finding, whatever it's called, is the worst thing to ever happen. It's going to kill the game. That's not the truth. That's far from it. And I'll use one example. On the forums, Mulletproof. Mulletproof, I hope you don't mind me using you as an example. And if you do, I apologize. But you said that you were one of the sky is falling cultists. And that you thought that RDF was going to absolutely destroy the game. Now you're saying that's not the case after playing it. Like me, you agree that it costs too much and you have to give up too much to get it. Also said it's exploitable, and so far has not been decisive in any of the battles you've played in. So I commend you. I commend you for taking a look at this. I commend you for actually getting in there and using it and deciding that the sky is not falling. Because I'm going to tell you right now, the sky is not falling. RDF has been a buff for destroyers, and I stand by that. Nothing else but mostly destroyers. Maybe Royal Navy cruisers a little bit, but by and large, this is a boon for destroyers. That brings me to the other myth, that this patch is somehow a massive buff for battleships. You all said that that was the case before this was even launched, but I knew from the beginning it would not be. And it's not necessarily that captain's skill that causes what I say is a nerf for battleships. It's the complete realignment of the skill tree. The captain's skill tree has effectively quasi-nerfed battleships. I'm not going to say it was a huge nerf. Maybe a minute nerf. But the fact of the matter is you can no longer get what you need with a 15-point captain. Not even with a 14-point captain. I could use a 14-point captain to great effect on United States battleships. Yeah, you could take double 4-point skills. You've got the manual anti-aircraft control, but you can't do that anymore. So for battleships, 16 and 17-point captains are the new 15-point captains. Because honestly, a 17-point captain is what you're going to need to take a lot of the skills and a lot of the build-outs that you used to take. So if anything, 0.6.0 has been a nerf for battleships. It is forcing you to take a long, hard look at your skills and what you went with. You are going to have to make sacrifices. So if anything, it's going to be harder for battleship captains out there. So no, that's another myth. This is not a buff for battleships. No way, no how. Zoup's opinion right there. Lastly, another giant myth that I saw floating around out there. There are no useful level 1 skills unless you're a CV captain. That's not the case either. A lot of people are saying there's nothing useful for battleships. Well, I'll tell you what. I find myself using Expert Loader a lot. I never used to pick that for battleships, but I do now. And I can actually see use in it, especially in battleships like the Dunkirk, where I flip back and forth from HE to AP a lot. Having Expert Loader there cuts down your load time. And in high tier battles, I can see the use in it there as well. I know a lot of people are of this mindset that, hey, I'm in a battleship, I use AP only. You know, that's all you can use in battleships. Well, you say poppycock to that. You know, if you're in a battleship and you're using only AP, especially in tier 10, you're doing something wrong and you're losing out on a lot of damage right there. Because I'll tell you what, if you're firing AP at a Yamato that's 22 kilometers, 23 kilometers out, you're slinging an AP and not HE, well, you know what? You're going to do nothing to that ship. put HE on there, though, and he's going to burn. And if he's a smart Yamato, he's going to let it burn. So there you go, right off the bat, 10,000, 15,000 hit point damage right there from your HE alone. Whereas if you're slinging AP, you might just be bouncing. So, I'm just saying, tactics. Combat tactics, Mr. Ryan. Use HE. I mean, you don't have to always use it, but there is a time and a place for HE. So, Expert Loader is going to be a help right there with that. You're going to be able to switch your stuff up quicker. And I find myself definitely taking it with my cruisers. But another skill one, another tier 1 skill that you can use is the Direction Center for Catapult aircraft. It's another one that might be useful, especially in the higher tiers where you might find more aircraft carriers. Having 2 combat aircraft in the air, that could help you a little bit. I'm just saying, it's not just for aircraft carriers at this 1-point skill level. There is stuff that can be useful to everyone else. And of course, priority target, which people are still debating whether or not that's for newer players or not. I'm still out on that one. The jury for me is still out. I don't know if that's going to be a benefit to me or not. I can see instances where it might be nice to know how many ships are focusing down on me, but people have already pointed out their ways around that. Just don't target the player. Hit X at the last second. Honestly, though, I'm not going to take the time to do that and plan that. I'm just going to play as I do. Because, one, I don't know who's using this stuff or not. Anyhow, there you have it. Those are 5 giant myths out there that just aren't true. No, this has not ruined the game. And no, it has not nerfed destroyers. If anything, it's a buff for destroyers. And again, radio direction finding, position finding, whatever the hell you want to call it, it's not destroying the game either. Far from it. Because not everybody's going to take it, not everybody's going to use it. It's not going to be a game breaker. It's just not. In the games I've played already, I don't even notice it. It's just not that big of a deal. It's in the game now. There's no point saying it shouldn't be in the game. And I had once said that. I felt that it shouldn't be in the game. And that remains true, but not because it's overpowered. I just didn't think it needed to be there. But now that it is there, we can't go back. And it's not going to cause the issues you all thought it would. Trust me. And again, 4 or 5, I don't even know what I'm on right now, myth-wise. It's not a buff for battleships. It's just not. I racked my brains yesterday trying to spec my battleships out, and it killed me because I had to place a lot of thought into every single ship I used. So guys, don't spread the doom and gloom. Don't fall for it. Don't fall for the whole sky is falling. We will weather this storm, I promise you. From me to you, you have my word. We will get through this. And 3, 4, 5, 6 months from now, we're going to look back at this and laugh and say, remember when I said that the sky was falling, that the end was near, that the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man was marching down the streets of Manhattan? No, that's not the case. We're going to look back at this and say, hey, you know what? These changes weren't that bad, because that's always what happens when all these updates come out. We worry that they're going to break the game, but we weather the storm. We get through it. So guys, give me your opinions. You've had a chance to play a little bit now. What do you think? Are things as bad as you thought they were? Or quite to the contrary, are they better than you thought? Let me know. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment here, and you know what? I'm feeling giving, so I will select one random comment to get a small and menial ship, maybe a Koenig Albert, which I think is an absolute seal clubber. I'll give you something. North American EU only, because those are really the only 2 places I can gift ships, but leave a comment. You might win something. Anyhow, guys, it's not over. This is the beginning. I promise you. I'm out.